I am 86 years old, and the years between 70 and 75 were the hardest ones I lived through. Not because something dramatic happened all at once, but because everything I had been postponing finally stopped waiting for me. At this age, time feels different. It doesn't stretch anymore. It settles. It sits beside you in the quiet and reminds you what is left and what isn't. I don't speak about those years to complain. I speak because I didn't understand them while I was inside them. Back then, I thought I had already done the hard parts of life. I had worked for decades. I had raised children. I had buried my parents. I believed the rest would be a slow easing, like stepping down from a long climb. It wasn't like that. When I was younger, in my 30s and 40s, I lived in a rhythm that felt permanent. I woke early, went to work, came home tired, ate whatever was on the table, and slept without thinking too much about the next day. Weekends were for errands, repairs, and sometimes a visit to relatives we didn't see often enough. I remember small things more clearly now than the big ones. The sound of my keys on the kitchen counter, the way my wife would call from the other room when dinner was ready, the way my children would ask questions I didn't always have time to answer properly. I thought there would always be time later to sit with them without looking at the clock, later to ask my wife about her day and actually listen, later to visit friends I kept postponing. It didn't feel like neglect at the time. It felt like responsibility. Work had to be done. Bills had to be paid. There was always something more urgent than a conversation. Years passed like that, quietly, without any single moment that felt like a mistake. Then I reached 70. I retired not long after. People told me I was lucky. Now you can rest, they said. Now you can enjoy life. I nodded. I believed them, at least in the beginning. The first few months felt strange, but manageable. I woke up without an alarm. I sat longer with my tea. I walked slowly, noticing things I had passed by for years without looking. But there was a silence I hadn't prepared for. Work had filled more than my time. It had filled my sense of being needed. Without it, the days stretched in a different way. Not busy, not full, just open. At first I thought I would adjust, but around 71, something else began to settle in. That was the first reason those years were so hard. The sudden understanding that the structure of your life is gone, and nothing replaces it the same way. You spend decades building a routine, and then one day it ends. Not gradually, just ends. I tried to keep myself occupied, small tasks, fixing things around the house that didn't really need fixing, walking longer routes just to pass the time. But it all felt like imitation, like I was pretending to still have somewhere important to be. And then there was the second reason. People begin to disappear. Not all at once, not in a way that alarms you immediately, but steadily. One friend stops calling. Another falls ill. Someone you used to see every month is suddenly gone, and the next time you think of them, you realize you hadn't spoken in years. I remember standing at a funeral when I was 72, looking around at faces I recognized, and noticing how many of them had aged in ways I hadn't seen before. We had all been getting older together, but from a distance. I thought about how many times I had meant to call that man. We used to work together. We used to laugh about small things that don't matter anymore. I never made that call. After a while, the number of people who remember your younger self starts to shrink. It becomes quieter. Your past doesn't disappear, but fewer people are left who shared it with you. That kind of loneliness is difficult to explain. It isn't just being alone in a room. It's being alone with your own memories. The third reason came slowly, but it stayed. Your body begins to change in ways you can't ignore anymore. Before 70, there were small inconveniences. A sore knee, a tired back, things you could dismiss, things you could work around. Between 70 and 75, it becomes different. I remember the first time I realized I couldn't walk as far as I used to without needing to sit down. It wasn't dramatic, just a quiet moment where I stopped and thought, this wasn't like this before. Then more things followed. Climbing stairs felt heavier. Carrying groceries required planning. Even getting out of bed some mornings took a second longer than it should have. You don't lose everything at once. That's what makes it harder. You lose it piece by piece, and you notice each piece because you remember when it was still there. And with each small loss, something else comes with it. Dependence. I didn't like asking for help. I had spent my whole life being the one others relied on. Suddenly, I found myself hesitating before simple tasks, wondering if I should ask someone to assist. That shift is not easy. The fourth reason was more quiet, but heavier than the others. Regret begins to speak more clearly. When you are younger, regret is something you push aside. You tell yourself there is still time to fix things, still time to say what needs to be said. Between 70 and 75, you start to understand that some things will remain unsaid. I would sit in the evenings and think about conversations I never had, apologies I delayed because they felt uncomfortable, moments I chose work over presence. I remembered a time my daughter wanted to show me something she had made. I was tired. I told her, later. I don't remember if I ever asked her about it again. She grew up. She has her own life now. We speak, but not about those small things that once mattered. You don't notice when those moments pass for the last time. There isn't a signal, no warning, just a quiet closing of a door you didn't realize was still open. And then the fifth reason, the realization of time itself. Not in a philosophical way, not in a dramatic way, just a simple understanding that what remains is less than what has passed. At 70, you still feel like you have time, enough to plan, to adjust, to reconnect. By 75, you begin to see the limits more clearly. I remember sitting alone one afternoon, doing nothing in particular, and thinking about how many years I might have left. Not with fear, just with clarity. I started counting in a way I never had before. 10 years, maybe less. And then I thought about how quickly the last 10 had gone. That was the moment it settled in. Not everything will be resolved. Not every relationship will be repaired. Not every word will be spoken. Some things will remain incomplete. There was a loss during those years that made it all sharper. My wife passed away when I was 73. It wasn't sudden. There had been signs, appointments, quiet concerns we didn't fully speak about. Even then, I believed there would be more time. There is always that belief. The day she died was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet. Too quiet. Afterward, the house felt different in a way I still cannot fully describe. Every object remained in place, but nothing felt the same. I would hear a sound in another room, and for a moment think it was her. Then I would remember. That kind of remembering is not something you get used to. You just learn to live around it. What was permanently lost became clear in those years. Not just her presence, but all the small, ordinary things we never thought to value enough while they were happening. The casual conversations, the shared routines, the simple comfort of someone being there without needing a reason. You don't get those back, no matter how much you think about them, no matter how much you wish you had paid more attention. If you are listening to this, I won't tell you what to do. I spent most of my life being told what should matter. I followed it the best I could. But I will say this. There is a difference between what feels urgent and what is actually important. I didn't understand that clearly when I had the chance to act on it. I thought providing was enough. I thought being responsible covered everything else. It doesn't. There are things that cannot be postponed without consequence. Conversations, time spent without distraction, simple acknowledgments that someone matters to you. These don't feel urgent in the moment. That's why they are easy to delay. And delay becomes absence before you notice. I am not saying this with regret that seeks to be corrected. It can't be corrected. I'm saying it because I didn't see it when it could still be seen. Now at 86, my days are quieter. I move slower. I speak less. There are long stretches where nothing happens, and I sit with my thoughts more than I used to. Some of those thoughts are gentle, others are not. But they are all I have left of certain times and people. I don't expect things to improve in some dramatic way. That expectation left years ago. What remains is acceptance, not a peaceful kind, just a steady one. I wake up. I go through the day. I remember what comes to mind. Sometimes I speak to people. Sometimes I don't. And at night, I sit in the same chair and let the quiet settle around me. Those years between 70 and 75 changed how I understood everything that came before them. They stripped away the idea that there would always be more time to arrange things properly. There isn't. There is only the time you are already inside, and it moves whether you are paying attention or not. I am near the end now. I can feel that in a way I couldn't before. Not as fear, just as a fact. There are fewer mornings ahead of me than behind me. I don't try to make them meaningful in any grand sense. I just notice them while they are still here. And sometimes I think about those years again, 70 to 75. Not because I want to change them, but because that was when I finally understood what could not be changed anymore.